Back on the CB750 rear wheel final assembly. Welcome to Hack-A-Week. Yes, we are back with the CB750 by popular demand. I deviated a little there and did some other things while I took a break from the old Honda for a while. I got the motor off the bench. It's over on the motorcycle jack, trying to figure out a way that I can come up with some sort of jig to put on that engine so that I can lift it up and put it into the bike. Maybe something that people can build, because putting these things back into the frame is a real pain in the ass, and the manual just says fit the engine from the right side and bolt it in place. Yeah, it's a little more difficult than that. It's 225 pounds of engine you need to lift up and put in there. So I'll come up with something, I'm sure, that I can connect to the existing points on there. That I got some ideas anyway. So this week I want to finish up the rear wheel. I left it with the whole drive hub without any rubber dampers in there. I've got to put those in. We're going to finish tightening up the holder here for the bearing, get that all adjusted, and just go ahead and bolt it all together, get some brakes in there. I think I've got all the parts rounded up for that stuff. We'll find out in just a minute. But anyway, let's get turning some wrenches here. We'll get the axle nut off, pull out the axle bolt so we can get the rear wheel off from this sucker, and we'll get that up on the bench and get to work on it. Okay, where did we leave off? We left off with the drive flange just being put in there with no rubbers in there at all, no dampers. So I've got the dampers that I'm going to install, got some brand new ones there. We're going to adjust this retainer ring for the bearing. That's a bit critical. You got to get that just right. You don't want it too tight, you don't want it too loose. You don't want to put any kind of a weird load on the inner race versus the outer race. You want it to be kind of neutral, so we'll work that out in a bit. Over on this side, we've got the brake assembly. There's nothing on it at the moment. I've got a little bit of surface rust in there I got to clean up from a couple of days throughout this winter when it warmed up and some condensation happened here in the shop. I hate when that happens because anything bare metal tends to get rusty. So let's go get this up on the workbench where we can work with it a little bit easier than here on the floor. Okay, so let's get the dampers put in. I've got some right here. These are the big ones. I had 3 good ones. Needed to order one more, and there it is. And I've got the other ones, the smaller ones. Those are right here. I had one good one of those, and I had to order 3 more of those. So one thing to note here, I've noticed that in one of my manuals later on, we're looking at right here, rear wheel and sprocket, CB750 and CB750K 1 through 6 and A. And these rubber dampers are a little bit different than what I have on this bike. Now over here on this page we have the CB750F, and I've got that style of damper assembly. So evidently the rear wheel that I got for my bike is a 750F, but it doesn't have the disc brake, which is odd. I don't know really what the deal is with that, but anyway, let's move right along. So these dampers have a nipple on them. That's right, I said nipple. And there's one here, and they need to poke through these holes right here that are in the hub. There's holes there, there, and they might be a little difficult to push through there, and I've used this stuff for a long time for lubricating rubber parts. It's just dielectric grease. You can buy at most auto parts stores. It's kind of a silicone grease, and just a tiny bit of this on rubber stuff really greases the skids really well. Helps out a whole bunch. I believe that the skinny one goes right there. And then the larger one, let's put a little lube on there. That one, I think, yeah, you can see that it just fits well. That one goes in right there. And then what you have is that little wedge shape that's left over right here. And that's where the flange goes on. You see the shape of the flange, it's kind of a wedge, and it's going to go right in there into that spot that looks like a wedge. Right in that area right there. So we'll get the rest of these in. We'll just go ahead and push them all the way through. Make sure that those nipples are poking all the way through each one of the holes. Let's go ahead and install the rest of these. So when I put these in, just for future sake, a little bit of that silicone lube here on the side that goes up against the aluminum, just a tiny smear of it, will help later when it's time to pull these things out, because they can stick pretty well. They can kind of get almost vulcanized to the surface. And then on the larger ones, a little bit of that, just a tiny, tiny bit. I mean, enough where you can barely see it. Put that on there and drop them in. Now, you don't have to do this. This is just me. This is one of my things. Just thinking ahead, because I've seen people have a hell of a time getting these out down the line when the rubber gets dried out, gets stuck to the drive flange. So I'm just going to put a little bit of that lube on there, and that will help when I go to put the flange in place. I've taken the bearing retainer back out, and I'm going to just double check this bearing. I put it in as just a preliminary setting. What you're after is to get this bearing in far enough where that spacer that's inside there doesn't have any play back and forth like this, up and down, or back and forth if it was on the bike. And I can wiggle that one just a little. So I'm going to give this bearing just a gentle tap with a bearing hammering tool thingy. It's just the size of the bearing, keeps you from hurting anything. I probably should have used this on the initial installation. Alright, that's pretty good. I can turn that with my thumb, okay? So let's put the bearing retainer in. We're going to take this down to where it just bottoms out. We're not going to get it really tight. Now all I'm going to do with this is just give it a little bit of a tap, just to make sure it's seated down there. I don't want to tighten the bearing up. I just want to retain it where it is. So right there, that should be fine. Now we need to lock it in place. So we're going to take a little punch, and we're going to punch it right here around the edges. You can see the 4 places where it was originally punched from the factory. Those were drilled out by the previous owner so that I could spin the old retainer out. Okay, got a center punch here, little point on it. We're just going to put a mark where it distorts the metal on this ring and the retainer, like so. Doesn't take too much. Just enough so that it can't loosen up by itself. And we're going to just kind of stay close to those original marks. Do that in 4 places. That's it. It's essentially locked in place now. If you want to double check it, I can try tapping it loose. And that's pretty good. Doesn't look like it wants to move at all. Now we can put the final drive flange on. There is a spacer that goes into this bearing, loads in this way, looks like that. I'm going to put just a tiny bit of grease on there. Reason being is it likes to fall out when you tip it upside down. So if I just put a tiny bit of some of this really sticky red synthetic grease on there, it should help keep it in place while I put the thing on. Let's make sure that all of these are pushed back as tight as they can get up against everything, and I'm going to put it in with kind of a rocking sort of a thing. I'll start from this side over here. You'll see what I mean. Just go ahead and line up one of the wedges there, and then let's go over to the next one. Make sure it lines up, and just kind of work your way around. Make sure that it's going in between the rubbers okay, and it should just slip right in. This is where that little bit of silicone really helps out a lot. So there we go. Now we can put the sprocket on. Let's get the sprocket on now. Drop that in place, and we'll put the chain guard. That's what I'm calling it. The only reason I can think of that this is there is if the chain were to come off. I think that theoretically what this would do is keep it from jumping down in here and possibly getting wrapped up between the swinging arm and the rotating assembly, maybe. I don't know. But anyway, I'm leaving it on. I have 2 of these. That's the best looking one. I think I'll just go ahead and put it on. These are the locking tabs that go in place. These are going to get bent up and they will make sure that the nuts stay in place. And we're going to put the 12 by 1.25 nuts on here. I actually bought these at the hardware store. I got a feeling that they're probably a little bit bigger socket size than what the original Honda ones were, but it doesn't matter. These are okay. Maybe they are the same size. I don't know. I spec'd it out, and all it says is 12 millimeter nut. So anyway, there they are. And I don't have a torque spec on them, but that's a pretty heavy duty stud there, 12 millimeters. So I figure 25 foot-pounds will be just fine. So let's take those 25 foot-pounds in, like always. Everything just a little bit snug first. That should be plenty tight enough. Maybe go 30. Why not? They're plenty big enough to handle 30. A little extra insurance. It's not that much more torque. You see the difference between 25 and 30 isn't a lot. You know, pretty much almost the same thing. So there you go. Now let's go ahead and bend the tabs up. I have one of these positioned where you can see it really well, and it's pretty straightforward stuff. You just bend the tab up into the nut, and then we'll take a punch and just drive it into the nut like so. If it's on a corner, just let it wrap around the corner. If it's on a flat side, just tap it up there where it's pushing against the flat side of the nut. That ensures that that nut won't back off and we lose our sprocket, which would not be a good thing. And that's the last one. Now we can flip this whole thing over and get after the brake side. As I mentioned before, I've got a lot of surface rust in here inside the drum. I'm going to see if I can clean it out with one of these sanding flap discs. I don't even know if I can fit it in there. Actually, not really, but yeah, I can't really get the damn thing in there, so I think we're just going to have to go with sandpaper. So let's see. I'm going to start out with some, what is this? I think it's some 220. I just need to knock back some of that surface rust. Put this thing together, take it out, drive it 50 miles, put the brakes on a few times. I'm pretty much going to clean all that stuff off anyway. But I should probably get as much off as I can ahead of time. Okay, after 5 minutes or so of some sanding with some 220, most of the rust is gone, and now we can go ahead and get all that crap out of there and get putting the brakes together. I'm going to go ahead and hit this with a little bit of brake cleaner just to go ahead and get the rest of that rusty, dusty rust dust out of there. Okay. Alright, we got the wheel set aside and we've got the brake shoe holder here. Got 2 brand new brake shoes. We've got the cam that goes in here. That's what goes like this and rotates, and this flat part pushes against the brake, and when it does, it raises it out like that. Some motorcycle brake shoe setups have that cam on both ends so that it equally pushes out the brake shoes. On this setup, it just pivots like that on this pivot pin here. And let's see, we got a few more other parts here. I'm going to put just a little bit of some lubricant on these two pins. You can maybe see there's a little groove in them right in there, and that's meant to hold just a little bit of grease to make sure that they stay moving nice and easy. And I think what I will use on there is a tiny bit of some anti-seize lubricant rather than grease, because it'll kind of stay in place a little better. This stuff has to be stirred up a little bit. This is just that aluminum based anti-seize lubricant. I'm just going to put a little on each one of these pins. And then we'll slide the shoes on over that. Now we've got two holes right here where cotter pins go. We've also got this plate. This is the retainer plate that keeps the shoes in place. Let's drop that on there. It's a little bit of a tight fit on this one because of the brand new plating that's on that thing. Now we need to put a couple of cotter pins in here. Okay, I found a couple of cotter pins that are going to work okay. So we'll push those through. And then we're going to take a pair of pliers and bend them back like so. Bend each one of them. That's what you want them to look like when you're done, with the tabs all the way bent up tight to the pins, well out of the way. Alright, now that we have that done, we're going to put a little more of this anti-seize lube in here, and then we'll put some on the actual actuator cam, whatever else you want to call it. I don't know, the brake cam. I'm not sure what they call it in the Honda book, parts breakdown, whatever. I'm going to just drop this in, and I'm going to smear a tiny bit, very tiny bit of some lube on each face of that cam, just to help with the friction that will occur there. So these go like that, and there's a couple of springs that are going to go on here, but I'll show you what happens when you rotate it. The flat part of the cam pushes the shoes apart, and that's what makes the brakes go on. Lastly, we have two springs to put on. One goes right here, the other one goes there. There's all kinds of ways that you can put springs on. You can grab them with pliers and stretch them into place. I'm going to see if I can get this one to kind of jump over here with the help of an awl. Yeah, it worked pretty well. Just turn everything around and repeat that same procedure over here. You can also grab it with pliers and just pull, but this usually works pretty well. Just watch out that you don't have it spring back on your fingers, because they'll bite you really good. There we go. The brake assembly's together. Springs are on, shoes are in, cotter pins in place, and Robert is your mother's brother. Now we take that whole assembly and we simply drop it in, and that's it. Now there is a dust seal that goes on here on the brake actuator rod, and there's also a little cap that goes on there too. I've got that dust seal ordered. It just slides over there, and then this goes on, and then the brake arm goes on, but we can put all that on later. This is now ready to put back onto the bike. Let's get the wheel rolled up in place. We've got a spacer that goes here on the brake side, this one right here. So what I like to do is get the wheel in there, put the spacer in, get the axle bolt started, and the spacer should still just barely touch the hub right here. And it's kind of convenient because you can just lift the wheel up and the spacer stays there, and then you can just push the axle bolt through. And I'm hanging up a little bit on that inner spacer inside. Let's get a few taps with a dead blow hammer here. There we go. And just kind of move the wheel around a little as you go through. Watch the other side. And there we go. We'll get the axle nut on here. I'm just going to start that for now, and then I'm just going to push the wheel forward until it hits the adjusters here, the chain adjusters. And for now, we're just going to leave it like that, and we're just going to go ahead and snug that bolt up, because later I will be doing a final adjustment once the chain is on. So for right now, that's that. There we go. We've got a wheel put together, final drive and all. All we have to do is finish up the brake stuff over on this side, and that takes care of that. So now I just got to figure out how to get that engine in there. As I mentioned before, it's sitting over here sleeping. I still got to put the valve cover on. I got to clean that up and get it on, and then I've got some ideas on how to make a jig for that so I can lift it up with maybe even an engine hoist and stick it in the frame, but I'll get that all worked out. Here's something kind of interesting I'll share with you. New addition to the shop here, a 1944 South Bend Model 9A metal lathe. And I got it as you see it now. What is it with me in these basket cases? Well, this one is in the midst of getting a rebuild and restoration, kind of like the way the CB750 was found. The guy that had it before me started to do some work on it. He's got all the pieces needed to put it back in good working order, and it's about 80% there. I've got to do a little bit more cleanup and work on it, but it's all there. Came with some tooling, and this is the kind that has the change gears on it. So it's got the automatic feed this way and the power cross feed. This is the whole saddle assembly here and everything. There's the apron. It's all apart right now, but this is going to be a very most welcome addition to the workshop. I've made a heavy-duty addition to the bench here, extended the bench over, knocked out those cabinets like I've been wanting to do for a while, and I've got a double thickness top here because it's pretty heavy-duty, and underneath it's reinforced really well. So this thing probably weighs upwards of 200 pounds by the time it's all put together, so I had to make a really tough workbench for it. But once this is up and running, wow, I'm going to be able to do some pretty neat stuff. I do know how to run a lathe, and it's, like I said, a most welcome addition to the tools in the shop. So if I would have had that a while back, I could have made those little oil metering valves that I needed to put in the top of the head, as you might recall from a couple of videos ago. So that'll be an upcoming project that I will be making videos on, and that should be exciting to watch as well, so stay tuned. All right, another step closer to a running machine. How about that? And another new machine in the shop. That's pretty awesome. This coming weekend, the 18th, guess who's getting married? That's right, me. There will be a special video that will be posted on that day. It's the making of Lisa's ring, and I'm going to unveil it on the day I get married. We get married. That's the 18th, next Saturday. So be sure to watch for that. And I get back on the bike after a few more parts come in, and like I said, that engine is the next thing that's going to go in. Once the engine's in here, it's going to get exciting real quick, because it's at that point a motorcycle with a few parts missing. So that's where we're at with all this. So thanks for watching, and thanks for all of the wonderful donations. I've been getting some really generous ones lately, and a lot of thank yous for the videos. And hey, thank you for watching. I really love making them, and I appreciate all the comments. and all the feedback in the emails. So keep watching, share the word, and thanks a lot. Until next time. Hey, we're back with the CB750 part 24. 3,